Hello, everyone, and welcome to our annual Women's Empowerment Conference. My name is Blanca Jara, and I am a member of the conference committee. Before we get started, I want to remind you that this session is being recorded, and the recording will be available on our website. Feel free to use the chat feature to ask questions and engage with each other. If you're comfortable, we welcome you keep your cameras on, but ask that you keep your microphone on mute while our presenters are speaking. Today's session is led by my doctoral program cohort friend, Flor Carabez. She is an NLU student success coach, and Zainab, Karim.
Yep.
She is an assistant professor of English also at NLU. They are presenting the framework they use to facilitate sessions for Exuberance, an intentional sisterhood. Flor and Zainab, thank you for joining us today, and we're happy to have you.
Thank you, Blanca.
Thanks, Blanca. Yeah, so just to let you all know, our presentation is going to be a little informal just because the way we function is more conversational, and that's actually how we run our Exuberance sessions. So just to give you an idea, it's not going to be too much presentation or talking at you. It's going to be more so us asking each other questions.
Yeah.
But you will be able to see some stuff on the screen.
And we do have a presentation slide, and we created this to stay on track because we love tangents and we go off on tangents. So we do have the presentation to keep us on track of what we want to talk about, but we might get off every now and then, just to let you know.
Right. Oh, there we go. All right. Well, Blanca already introduced us, but I don't know if Zainab, if you have anything else you want to add about yourself?
No, we're good there.
All right. So just to give you an idea of the agenda for today, we're going to cover a little bit about National Louis University, which is where we both work and where Exuberance exists. We're going to transition into talking about Exuberance and how it started. Then we'll go into the framework that we use, which is a combination of positive youth development and restorative justice practices, what it looks like in sessions and in the back end where the facilitation team starts programming and building the content. At the end, we'll have questions, and I'll also have a list of references that we use for the data and the articles that helped build all of Exuberance. All right, so just to give you an idea about National Louis University, we are a private nonprofit university, and we were established in 1886. So it started off as a teaching college, mainly for women, but now it's transitioned into this beautiful university. We're focusing more so on the Undergraduate College, which is where Exuberance lives. We have a mission of driving equity in higher education. So most of our, most of the students that we target for recruitment and admissions are students of color. Primarily Black and Latinx students from inner city in Chicago. And we are considered a commuter school. So we do have some on-campus living in the downtown area, but most of our students do commute. And we are a highly technologically enabled institution. So our model is a hybrid model where students before the pandemic would be able to log in or go to class in person, and they would do all their assignments online. But now everything is remote until if and when we go back to campus.
And I think the technology-enabled aspect of NLU is what kept us thriving throughout the pandemic as well.
Yeah, so on the screen right now, you see some of the priorities for our Pathways program, which is in the Undergraduate College for first-time freshmen. We're only showing this in case any of you out there are working with ILEA plans or in the Illinois school system. So Exuberance does live as a factor for helping with the initiatives for the Illinois Equity and Attainment Plan for NLU. So it's just to give you an idea, if after the presentation, you're inspired to start Exuberance on your campus, this is a good way for you to drive the work and to approach your leadership at your respective institution to make it happen on your campus.
So now we're getting to the good stuff about Exuberance and why we exist. So Flor and I let's start with the origin story, right? So before I was assistant professor of English, I was a temporary coach taking over for another coach who was on paternity leave. And that's when I met Flor, and we instantly clicked. I don't know if it was the aspect of just both of us having really big personalities or just we were both kind of the new people in the situation. So we just kind of gravitate towards each other. And Flor has this like beautiful mind where she always has so many great ideas, right? So she came to me and she asked me just like blatantly, like, hey, you want to start a girls group? And I'm like, sure. And I'm like, that's where we started. Like, okay, so someone has an idea, they bring it to the table, so let's get started. And Flor is also like super logistical. So when she has an idea, it's like she gets on the ground and she starts running with it. So it's like by like that second day after she asked me, she had already had a plan together. And I'm like, whoa, okay, so we are really doing this thing, right? So we came together and we have a mission statement, which is Exuberance is a brave space for women of color to have vulnerable conversations, promoting education, catalyzing self-awareness, practicing good health, and celebrating culture through creating an intentional sisterhood. We wanted it to be intentional because we wanted them to understand that this thing needs to be driven by something deeper than just doing it for the sake of doing it. Our vision statement, which actually came up with like the other day, that's off the fly, which is do all things with the divine feminine in mind. We want these girls to understand that divine feminine is such a receptive energy, that you're receptive of many things and not just what people are just willing to give you, right? You keep yourself open for the good things, for the lessons, for the learning. So that's kind of like how we started when it came to Exuberance.
Yeah, so the frameworks that we use for building the content and just providing the space as a whole, pre-pandemic and now, is a combination of positive youth development theory and restorative justice practices. So the positive youth development framework is where you're meeting students where they're at, you're meeting young people where they're at. So you literally just meet with them to try to get to know them, establish a rapport, to see not just what assets they bring to the table, but just like holistically, what are they interested in? What does their everyday look like? With this group specifically, we've gotten down to what does their pain look like and where is it coming from? So we build our content off of that, just like, honestly, it feels like baby steps because we don't move faster than what the group is comfortable doing. And we found that that's worked recently. We have new members that come in, and because they feel the energy and the vibe, even though it's remote, they're comfortable in sharing and just opening up, and they continue returning. So that's from the positive youth development framework. And then the restorative justice piece, we've adopted the talking circles. So on the screen, you see like our pre-pandemic. So we had 2 sessions where we were doing icebreakers. So we established the talking circles for using the restorative justice practices. We also have some norms that we created as a group. Well, actually the facilitation team created them. We offered them to the group, and every time there's a new member, we go over them again. And the last piece is the harm reduction. So we don't tell young people what to do. We don't tell them that they're wrong. We validate their feelings, and we ask them first if they want advice or if they're just looking to vent.
Yep.
Did I miss anything?
No, that was good. I want to talk a little bit about these pictures that we have on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
So when we started our first meeting, we were out the gate super strong. I think our first meeting had 28 students or 32.
We had like about 30, yeah.
Yeah, somewhere around between 28 and 32 students, like out the gate. Like, and so we were like kind of nervous, like getting up to that point. Like we had people who said they were interested. We had a list of emails and all that other stuff. But we didn't know how it was going to turn out when we actually opened the space for students to come. And that first meeting, we were like, afterward, we were like, girl, like, this is actually a thing, is going forward. The second meeting, stronger,
right,
closer to 40 students. So I think that led to the idea that first meeting like really offered a space for students, and then word of mouth hit the university, and it just like it ran, and students was like showing up. It was really interesting. Like, did we only have 2 meetings?
We were only able to have 2 sessions, yeah, before the pandemic.
We were only able to have 2 sessions. So the one on the screen, this was the first one or the second one?
That was the first one.
So this was the first one. And this activity had to do with all the connections that we have amongst each other. So this was Flor's idea. And what was the activity? Like, so ask a question?
Yep. So we would ask a question about like, who likes Harry Potter? So I love Harry Potter. So I would raise my hand and then I would get a piece of the yarn, or it was like ribbon. And then it was my turn to ask a question. So I think mine was like, who likes Bad Bunny? So then it was like 5 students that raised their hand. So I just picked one and I threw it to them and so on. So the point of it at the end was to show that one way or another, we're all connected.
Yeah, we're all connected. And what I remember vividly is that second meeting, because we talked about womanhood. Like, what does it mean to be a woman? And I think a lot of us left that meeting like in tears.
Yeah.
Like completely connected in tears. We had a trans student talk about her struggles with womanhood and still being connected to growing up as a boy child and now wanting to be accepted into womanhood. We talked about stereotypes among Latino women, and then what it means, Blackness and all that other stuff. So that meeting, like, first off, we were in a very small classroom. So we were kind of like on top of each other, but it didn't feel crowded. It felt like we were connected. Like we were just like one breathing heart, like, and what we were talking about just like really kept us going. And it was kind of sad that it was only an hour, you know, and we can only like do 1 hour in a space like that. Like it was really, really deep. And Latanya, who is this licensed social worker, she's also part of this facilitation team, taught us how to breathe. Because I remember in that moment, we were like, everybody take deep breaths because it was heavy. And we were all like breathing from our chest. It was like super shallow. Because I was like, oh my God, that was a lot. She's like, oh, no. Everybody just stop. Breathe from your belly. Like you got to like get deep with it. And then the second one is, I'm not sure if that was our first virtual or like one of the
That was one of our first, but it was also one of our really good ones.
Yeah, that was a really good one. So on the screen, you see my name on the screen, and it's the Urban Dictionary definition of my name. So we did the activity of what does your name mean? And do you resonate with the meaning that is out there in the world? And we even gave them an opportunity to kind of like change the meaning, like, oh no, I don't think that's what my name means. And that was actually like really, really fun.
It was
because people didn't know, like, oh, I could just Google my name and see what it means on the internet. And Urban Dictionary has like these, I mean, it's user based, like people are going in there and typing stuff in there. So it's kind of like, some of the stuff is like super wild. So the students also were like, I can't find my name and all this other stuff. But that was like, I think one of those virtual meetings where we really came together. And I think that was like one of the meetings where we saw the growth from that point forward. Yeah.
All right, let me check the chat real quick. Oh, see, glad you're coming. All right, so we mentioned earlier that we had offered some norms to the group, and these are the norms that the entire group has agreed upon till this day. So they're actually adapted from Singleton's, I believe it's called Critical Conversations About Race. So stay engaged, speak your truth, experience discomfort, expect and accept non-closure. And as we mentioned, every time a new person, regardless of them being a student, of being a faculty member, staff, whoever, we go over these norms just to make sure that we're all on the same page on the energy, the vibes, and that we're respecting the space and respecting each other.
Yeah.
We're working on a 5th norm, but we just haven't decided exactly how to define it just yet, because we want folks to learn how to honor the spotlight. So an example is if I say, like Blanca was wearing hoops earlier, and I say, man, I love when Latinas wear hoops. So she's feeling it, right? Like, yes, I love when Latinas wear hoops. And then if Zainab would come be like, well, I love when all women wear hoops, you know, like it's not in a bad intention, but it's kind of robbing the spotlight from that moment. Yeah. So we'll have that soon. We just haven't defined it yet, but just to give you an idea of something that you might want to incorporate in your work.
Yeah, and it came up because we had the crossover. So this is an interesting thing too, because there is a male identifying group on campus too. One of the biggest reasons why when I came and I was like, I was an adjunct before I was a temporary coach, and I wasn't really engrossed in the campus, like what was really happening. It was when I became a coach that I was like really seeing all the background and everything that's happening. So we had the Brotherhood group, And I was like, that's strange. Is there not a sisterhood group?
Right.
Like, and then that's when Flor came to me not too long after that. But like I said before, Flor is, as an Aries woman, super action-based, right? I'm more cerebral, like the ideas are here, but she's like, the ideas need to come out there.
You're all the vibes.
Right. So I'm just like, oh yeah, that would be great. But she's like action-based behind it. So that was interesting that we didn't have that. So we came together with Eagle Brotherhood, which is the group, and we did a co-ed group for a co-ed meeting for Valentine's Day. And that was experience with what Flor talked about with someone robbing someone's space, was experience in that space where someone talked about loving, seeing a certain demographic of people loving one another. And this person shot out, like it was in direct contrast to what they said. Well, I love seeing all people. And I was like, that's a thing that comes in our mind, but we need to have a better understanding of how to deliver that without making it seem like what the other person said was wrong. So each time we have, and that hasn't been something that we experience in Exuberance. Like,
no,
it is such a respectful space. Like, girls are coming, like we have all levels, freshmen, sophomores, junior, senior. But we haven't had that in that space of our meetings. But when we brought in the male energy, it became a little different, right? So one of our girls in Exuberance said she didn't like that. Mm-hmm. She's like, I really did not like when that person did that to me. And I was like, you know what? We get it. We understand that. So now we add to our norms based on what we experience. And that's just how it was. But it was a good mm-hmm. experience to bring the two together. But we did understand that there will always be like differences that we can work through.
Right. And because it's a bigger group, so it's a little harder to control.
This is such a bigger group. All right. So facilitation sessions and events. This is actually really fun for me to do these sessions. Like I said before, pre-pandemic, we were only doing Wednesdays, and twice a month we were in. And we had those strong students, 30 to 40 students. And I think the other side of so many people showing up is because we had food. Like, people want to eat. Like, when I come to and it was during lunchtime too. So it's like, we got food, come on to check in. We did the SEL check-ins, icebreakers, identity work. Majority of Latino women came. And I thought that was a really good thing, especially the icebreakers. Yeah. Like, we had stuff on the door. They can sign their name. The one that I really liked that we did was, how are you feeling when you're coming into the space? Mm-hmm. And how do you feel as you're leaving the space? And we saw big differences. Like, sometimes it's like sluggish, whatever. But having gone through the process of just like decompressing and unloading, a lot of them walked out feeling different. Yeah.
And for us, it was a good assessment tool. Mm-hmm. So we did the traffic light. Mm-hmm. So it was like, red, yellow, green, and we saw the difference when they came in and left, because the other thing we're trying to assess is to make sure that their energy is uplifted when they leave and not like,
Right, yeah, because some of them did come in like, and lots of trepidation, mm-hmm. right? What is this going to be like? What are we just coming in just to vent? And sometimes that is a space to just vent, right? Get out how you feel. But I did notice that a lot of students came with their friends, like packs of friends, just like, we're just going to see what it's about. But those two meetings we saw, like, it grow from that 28 to 32
like
to 40. Clicks. It was little clicks, and it was fun. But we also did something too where we had that one activity where you had to pair up, mm-hmm. but it couldn't be with somebody that you came with or that you knew prior. So that was a good way for us to get the girls on campus to like really see each other. At that time. And then I also noticed in that meeting too, like the other demographics was there. Mm-hmm. I think, I'm not sure if she was Native American, but there was a girl who was there, Middle Eastern students who were there like, oh, I just didn't know. And then other students who are so busy with their schoolwork that they're just like, I didn't know there were places where we can just like come and just talk. I want to do this more often. I remember one girl telling me that too. So that was great being pre-pandemic. The start of remote learning, rough.
It was rough.
It was really rough. We had actually revved it up from, it's still bi-weekly, but we did twice a week. So we had some students, our schedules are very, What do you want to say?
So the undergraduate college schedules for students are in blocks.
Yeah.
So students have class essentially for 3 hours. They're scheduled for class in the morning from 9 to noon. And then they have a 1 hour break. And then their second class starts at 1 to 4. So we tried to get them in that noon hour just because when we were on campus, they were already in the building. Their brain was already set with being there all day. So we might as well just get them while they have an additional responsibility.
Yeah.
So that worked. But then when remote learning started, it was rough.
Like no one wants to be like, I know that I experienced, because I also teach these block classes. So I experienced a little bit of Zoom fatigue that they talk about quite a bit. Like I'm on there, but none of my classes reach 3 hours. So I'm on there for like 2 hours, and then I need a little bit of break, and then we do Exuberance. But the thing that I found about Exuberance is I didn't feel Zoom fatigue in Exuberance. So that was a good thing for me, that it became that space where I knew I can go and I can breathe. Like I wasn't on, I didn't have to do anything, but just show up and be myself, right? So we switched from Wednesdays, which is for our freshmen and seniors.
Yes.
And then Thursdays, the sophomores and juniors can hop in. But we have found that sometimes we have the same students coming in Wednesdays and Thursdays because they want that space. But sometimes we had meetings where nobody showed up.
Yeah. At the beginning, when we shifted to remote learning, there were some times where it was just, well, I guess no one's coming in.
So we just sat there and talked.
So
we just sat there and talked.
Yeah.
And I think that portion of it for me, because sometimes we just like, if no one's coming, then I'm not going to come. But I think what happened is that we were committed to what we started, and we didn't want it to be, and we stuck it out. Like we would hop in every time, and we would be on there for the 45 minutes to an hour, right? Because we had this in mind. What if somebody does show up?
Right.
And I don't want them to hop into this and nobody's here. That's sending the wrong signal. So we just, every time we still hopped in and we were on there. And sometimes one person would hop in, and then we would just talk to them about whatever, see how they're doing. And every single week it started to grow. Like we really, like we were prepared for whether there was 0 or the 30 students. We were always prepared for that.
I think we saw an influx during like the midterm of that first quarter, just because there was just, the pandemic was happening, and then all the riots and the civil injustices that we keep experiencing. So students were feeling a lot and they had nowhere to go. So little by little, we started seeing an influx of students coming in just to talk. On top of, a lot of students have these home lives where they don't feel validated or they don't feel comfortable in sharing their college experience. We have a lot of first generation students. So with them being at home now and being easily accessible to their parents, a lot of them have to babysit while they're online. They have to work. I have a lot of students that had to actually pick up like 40 to 60 hours and are still trying to maintain a full-time school load. So they just needed somewhere to breathe.
Yeah, it became, this Exuberance became the space for that. And we do a lot of identity work. Like we need you to know who you are, what you're capable of. And then the other side of that is the identity work helps us.
Right.
Like, who are we? We coming up in here telling y'all who y'all are. Who are we? And we do a lot of that, like
together.
Complete, like when I tell you this space is such a vulnerable space, they've seen us cry. We've seen them cry. We talked about some really deep things to help them. And pre-pandemic and the start of the remote, it was majority Latinx students showing up. But now we're seeing a combination of both. And it's such a great thing. So we're still with the same schedule. We are now moving towards, sometimes we have like 12 students hopping in. We still do the same thing, the identity work, the inner work. We rotate facilitation now. We have Jeanette, who is another coach, Latanya, who is our licensed clinical social worker. She's here right now. We appreciate her so much. And so each of us brings something different to the facilitation. We've done chair yoga, we've done poems. We had a healthy communication session where it was like, we're very authentic to who we are. Like Flor and I curse. Like, we curse. We're not going to hide from the fact that we curse. So our healthy communication session was, what do you do when somebody has you fucked up? And the students attached to that very quickly. Like, we had a list of prompts and questions, and they went through them. It was so many, and we went through them, and we had such an amazing conversation about, yep, I've experienced that. This is what I said. This is what I do. I wish I would have said something different. So these are the things that we see that we do that's actually grown the number of girls who show up, and the girls who keep coming back, and the ones who are bringing their friends.
Right.
That's a great thing too. And we have actually expanded now to having 2 student employees who can come in and get leadership skills. And I think that was a direct response to the pandemic. Like, we had one student who we just hired her this week last week, who said that she was working. She had to go out and work. And she doesn't like it at all. So she's one of our most consistent students. And sometimes she wasn't able to show up because she had to be at work, and it was so stressful on her. So we didn't necessarily create this job with her in mind, but we wanted to, she went through the whole interview process, all that other thing. But we were able to offer her a position where she was able to quit that job and come work here. And that lends to the fact that she doesn't have to necessarily leave her house if she doesn't want to during the pandemic. She can actually spend a lot of time focusing on her schoolwork, and she can be in a space where she actually liked being there and get paid.
Right.
So that's a good thing.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
All right, so we're still continuing on the facilitate. We can literally talk about exuberance all day.
All day. This is something we love. Like, this is our favorite. Look at our shirts.
Right.
Like, serious.
Yeah. So with all of the work that we've done together, and all the authenticity, like, it's just so lax when you hop into the Zoom. And I think part of that, like you said, was that the facilitators are as vulnerable as the students, which I didn't recognize until Z put me on blast, because she was like, well, because I was actually facilitating that day, and we were talking about the love languages. And she was like, oh, I think you should talk a little bit more about that, because we had talked about it, but she wanted me to share with the group. And I was like, so I started sharing, but I try to be mindful that this is like a student space. So for me to like step up and step back. Yeah. So I had finished saying what I was going to say. And then I was like, well, like, I don't want to take up any more time. Like, if anyone else wants to go. And one of the students was actually like, well, no, like, we actually don't really know you because you don't really share. And I was like, that didn't even cross my mind. So at that moment I was like, wow, like, you're right. And reflecting on it more, it's inequitable for me to expect this vulnerability from people when I'm not reciprocating. Yeah. So after that, I've tried to share as much as I'm comfortable with.
Yeah, but that meeting was so funny.
It
was the funniest meeting we had, because we kind of like sort of kind of started a book club as well. And we've ordered 5 love languages for the girls to read, and we're going to dive into that come the spring term, the winter term just ended this week. So in the spring term, we're diving into 5 love languages. And that was actually in direct response to a girl when we had the Valentine's Day crossover with the Brotherhood group. She said, I don't really know what love is, or what it should look like. What it should look like for me. Like, and that's something that I'm struggling with. And having just read 5 love languages, maybe like weeks before she said that, I told Flor, I said, that might be actually it's a very simple, thin book, maybe about 100 pages to like really dive into. And then in that meeting before the conversation Flor had, we did the love languages quiz online. So the girls can know what their love languages are. And that was an interesting meeting. But the meeting that Flor was talking about, it's an amazing book. So the meeting that Flor was talking about, she was trying to skip over something that we had talked about. But we talk about that, like, listen, these girls need us to be vulnerable and authentic and truth-telling. So it's like, tell them how you operate when your boyfriend told you what his love languages were. I'm like, I want to hear you say that. I want you to hear you tell them what happened. And she did, and they just erupted in laughter. They're like, are you serious? And so we were able to see more of, I'm always seeing Flor, but they were able to see more of Flor in that moment. Yeah. And what I heard was just like this constant, like when you go into these Zoom meetings, sometimes it's so quiet.
It's like, why are we here?
Like, why are we here? Oh my God. But those are like our last maybe like 5 or 6 meetings has been lit. Like we've had people come in who were supposed to come in to do to observe. And they're now in the conversation like, oh, well, let me tell you what happened to me. And the girls attached to that because these are grown women and we're supposed to have this idea of everything's together. Mm-hmm. And it's like, girl, no.
We're just older.
We're just older. That's all it is. We're just older. We don't have everything
still growing.
Together, right? So that meeting, like just to hear the laughter, the constant conversations, like I want to go next. Like, let me tell you what happened. That feels good. So we've grown from a place of just her and I being in the Zooms, just waiting and talking to now like them not wanting to leave, them wanting to just continue. So with that understanding, we've created other spaces for them to actually continue to talk. So we talked about student voice, definitely student-centered. No power dynamics, nowhere. Like, yes, I have a specialty, Flor does, Latanya does, Jeanette does, but we're not like wielding that.
Right.
Like, this is me. We don't even do that. We get in there, we're just like, girl,
right.
How was your day? Like, what is happening with you? And then the girls attach to those type of things. We have a group me, which is always lit.
And they ask for it.
They ask for it. Like these girls, I wake up in the morning to like 10 messages. One of our members, she's here today, CT, she sent us a picture of planners that they have on sale at Target for $1. We talk about planning and all that other stuff. So that was a sweet thing. Our other member, she went to like dinner with her boyfriend and his sister. She sent us pictures of that. So we have so many different ways that we connect with girls through the pandemic. See, CT's in the meeting right now. So that's another vulnerable space. We talk about
they ask for help for homework too.
Help with homework. 2 girls were actually in the group me helping one another with resumes, conversations about Braven, which is a class.
It's a career
class that they take. Mm-hmm. So it was really, really good to see these girls coming together and figuring out like points of connection that they have, and it's always happening. If they ask for advice, we give it, but we are totally against unsolicited advice. Right. If they ask to vent, they can do that too. And we celebrate each time they do these things. I think I wanted to talk about, more of our sessions. Is this the next slide?
Yep.
Yeah, more of our sessions. I don't think we put it on here, but the tea party, is it on here?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is where we talk about it.
Yeah. So the session, we talk about the love languages and relationships. It was so funny. We had, so we are going to talk about the tea party. We have our standing sessions, which is Wednesdays and Thursdays between 12 and 1. We have our group me, and then we also created tea party on Friday. So we recognize that sometimes Friday is the day that most people don't have to do a class. So there is a study table Zoom room where students can go in to study and all that other stuff. And we created a separate room for the girls called Tea Party.
Within the study tables.
Within the study tables. So they show up and it's kind of like, showing up to a house, like point me to the room where my people are.
Ben's like, what do you want it to be called? And I'm like, tea party.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, tea party.
We're in there spilling tea. We're talking about everything. And the first tea party, God, we didn't even want to leave. Yeah. It was like 3 hours long and we did not want to leave. We had girls in the chat talking about books, and sci-fi, fiction crushes, favorite movies. And these are horoscopes. These are 2 girls who had never been in the same sessions together. So to get them into the tea party together and have them talking together in the chat, it was just kind of like, hey, hi, who are you? Oh, and they went on like that. Another one of our girls is very soft-spoken, but she talked about online dating and how she sees the same guys on a different dating apps or whatever. So that was super duper funny. We helped one student with her math project, creating presentations. We talked about slide carnival, stuff like that. So in the tea party, we get more time with the girls. We get more time to like really dive into any personal things. Whereas within that hour that we have to stick to that hour, because I have classes to teach afterwards, and the girls sometimes have school or work to go to. But that tea party is 1 to 4 every Friday, and they come in there and we just like dive into it.
Yeah, so we started it. We partnered with study tables because although this space isn't primarily for academic purposes, it is considered a retention and persistence tool. So obviously there's an academic component to that. So we don't talk about class in the space unless someone wants to vent about it. But the study tables actually comes from a lot of the student success coaches were in Greek life, and we had to do study tables. So this idea came up. I think it was Mariana or Aurora, I'm not sure. So we've been holding study tables since I don't know when. Now they're virtual. Ben runs them. So we connected. I figured, well, I wonder if they would want to log in on Fridays to do their homework, because it kept coming up. Oh, it was Aurora. Okay, shout out. So I asked the group on the GroupMe, I did a poll and I said, who would be interested in logging in on Fridays for study tables? We can have our own little room. We'll play music and you could chill, you could do your homework, you know, whatever. Because when I was in college, that's what study tables was. So a lot of them said, yeah, let's do it. So I told Ben, hey, make me a room. And this was more of like to test it out to see if they would actually show up. So we actually did our first one 2 weeks ago, and they've been attending since then. So we're just gonna keep this moving forward.
And it's not even like Flor said, like we're not getting in there doing anything per se. Like last week, I was so tired, and we came together here last Friday to create our slides and stuff. And I was in the corner tucked and like knocked out, but
like a bird.
Right, like a little bird. And we were like all in the tea party talking about different things. And one student, she didn't even when 4 o'clock came, she didn't want to get off. She's like, I'm just gonna have it up, and we can just like I can just see what y'all doing or whatever. So because of that, we love that we have multiple spaces for these girls to come in and just like deep dive into whatever. And sometimes it's just pandemic life can also feel very lonely. Like if I am a only child and my parents are gone at work all day or whatever the case is, I need a space where I can just come and feel connected. So this is what I believe Exuberance, the tea parties, the GroupMe, this is what it offers to those students.
I remind them that we're human. We're not machines to just get all these A's. We validate them a lot, and just letting them know like your best is your best, and that's going to look different across the board and depending on what's happening. Actually, last week, the group helped one of the members write up their 2-week notice. Yeah,
she's like, I'm so scared to do this. She did not like the job and she just wanted to leave. And so everyone was like crowding around her, like, just do it, just do it, just do it. We'll help you, just do it. And that is what we love to see. So while it has grown to almost 12 students per meeting or tea party or whatever, we're adding more girls to the GroupMe who haven't come to the sessions. So it's like whatever place you can show up to and be consistent. So sometimes they're consistent in just typing in GroupMe, and sometimes they want to show their face to come up, and sometimes they don't. So each of these spaces is for that type of thing. Sometimes people just only like to be connected through talking on text. So that's another reason why GroupMe is important. Flor can talk a little bit about the events, especially the mental health first aider certification.
Yeah, so Zainab already covered the co-ed crossover. We actually have part 2 coming up pretty soon. So it's #relationship goals. The first one was talking about just what are relationships. So normally when you hear relationship, you're thinking about romantic relationships. Not often do you think about the relationship with yourself, with your colleagues, with your friends, with your parents, siblings, and they're all relationships. So we did that first one with Eagle Brotherhood, and it was actually open to all students, but we were the main facilitators. And it was nice because the coaches got to share as well. So the students got to see us in a different light. Zainab brought her vibes and it was just lit in there. We actually had to extend it an additional hour because the conversation was just that good. So now we're doing part 2 to focus more on the romantic relationships. So that one's coming up. The second bullet is about the mental health first aid certifications. So I have a friend of mine that is licensed in certifying people in mental health first aid. So it's literally like first aid, like CPR, but for mental health. So this certification teaches you, one, how to change your language to be more inclusive and understanding of people that are living with mental health issues. And if someone is having a panic attack, for example, they also provide you some best practices to calm people down, and having questions that will directly ask people, like, are you thinking about killing yourself? So that question's hard.
Mm-hmm.
That question is hard, but the certification prepares you to do that. So I tried opening it up to mainly my students, because I do coach psychology majors, but it kept coming up in our sessions. So I opened it up to the group to see if they wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Since we are grant funded, we were able to pay for the certification through the grant funds. So one, they have a better understanding and best practices to talk to each other in the space and outside of it. And two, a lot of our students are majoring in psychology or minoring in it or have some sort of interest in it. So it also strengthened their career skills with that. And then we talked about the tea parties.
Our favorite thing, tea parties, these sessions and these tea parties.
Yeah, so some key takeaways in case you are thinking about starting Exuberance on your respective campus. Keep in mind the two frameworks, so restorative justice practices and positive youth development theory. So both of those combined, you are to work with students, not for them, definitely not against them. Definitely just work with them. Forget about your title, forget about your age. We're all developing human beings in the end. Reciprocation in vulnerability was a lesson I had to learn.
Big, big.
And the emphasis on brave space. So the difference between the safe space and the brave space is that the safe space is assuming that one person has control of everyone's safety.
Yeah.
Whereas brave space, you're acknowledging that you don't have control of the space and you don't have control of the people. So if someone decides to share and be vulnerable, it's because they're brave enough to do so. Yeah. So it switches the lens. Word of mouth is the best form of marketing, period. We got some swag from the grants that we received. So we got shirts, we incentivized attendance. So after 3 sessions that students attend, they earn a shirt. If they invite a friend to come over and their friend shows up for 3 sessions and earns their shirt, then that student earns their shirt, and then the other one earns a sweater that has the same logo, and it's dope.
It is such a dope logo. When we created this logo, like the colors, like we were hoping the colors would pop, but they just like, this is amazing. They pop. We got masks now for students, pens, and I really love when the girls say, "I got my sweater, I got my bag." And we actually did. I don't know when that was, but we had actually, when we got our shirts, we gave students, we had bags. We had the backpacks. They're like the small, I don't know what they're called, but they're drawstring. The drawstring backpacks. We gave them journals, t-shirts, other little knickknacks. And we actually hand delivered those. Yeah. So that was a good time to actually, it was definitely social distancing, hand delivering. But when I delivered to one girl, we call her the queen of the world because she's always doing something. She was so happy to see me.
She's too busy being great.
She said, and her favorite line is, I'm so much is happening. I'm just out here too busy being great. So it was really good to see her and 2 of the other students when we did our drop-offs. I don't even know when that was. It was last year. Yeah. I just don't remember exactly when that was though.
And lastly, just make it fun.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be, we love our mask, CT. Like, I love these masks. My daughter has one too. She thinks she's a part of Exuberance. And I actually have an extra t-shirt because she thinks she's a part of Exuberance. And the fun part of it too is like, kind of like read the room about the fun part. Like sometimes you go into our meetings and it's like, okay, this is going to be a little heavier. So we might not want to make jokes and stuff like that. So we kind of like read the room in that sense. The last couple meetings have been a mixture of fun and just like complete vulnerability about different things. And like I said, which is the funny part about it is we had 2 people come to observe our meetings, and they both got into the conversation about what's going on. And I think that lends to the idea that the space that we create for Exuberance is conducive for that. Like anybody can join here. female identifying because we wanted to remain that space that is full of receptivity, that divine feminine we talked about. So anybody who comes into that, like, they feel that, they like leave with that type of feeling. And thanks to Flor for this wonderful, wonderful idea and driving force behind it that created the space for the facilitators as well to feel comfortable. And we have some seriously honest conversations.
We do.
Yeah. So that's our exuberance.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So we can open it up to any questions anyone has. I'm going to switch the screen over to,
Stop sharing.
To,
yeah,
so we can see you all.
Hey! We couldn't see nobody at first. We just saw
right.
That was purposeful because I didn't want to get like too far off of it. Because I see people talk, see people's faces, and I'm like, oh, hey, what you over there doing? So yeah, if anybody has any questions about this framework or comments or anything like that, we're completely open for that. I think we have like 10 more minutes.
Yeah, I did ask in the chat box that if they have questions, just to raise their hands and we'll unmute them. In the meantime, let's show you guys some love for all the fabulous information. It was a very empowering workshop that you guys held, and it's awesome to see all the great work that you're doing at NLU, and that other institutions should be able to, provide this type of work to their college body, So thank you so much. And in the meantime, again, if you guys have any questions, you could either drop your question in the chat box or just raise your hand and we'll unmute you.
Yes, thank you so much, Bob.
Yeah,
I appreciate that.
You guys can keep on talking until we find some break. So
this felt good though too, because I think we would like to see more of these spaces being created for young women, because we found out they really need it. Like when we created this and we had that influx of students coming in that first meeting, I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I keep saying to Flor, and she can't stand that I keep saying this, but I'm like, while I love that we had those 30-something students show up those first couple of meetings, there's a really different feeling about now the 10 to 12 students who consistently show up and that connection that we have. And she's like, yes, that's fine, but we still want to make the space open for the students when we come back to campus and all that other stuff. And I'm like, okay, yes.
Well, because we want to show the sisterhood.
It is a sisterhood. It really is.
So Gabriela, open sessions for guest drop-ins. We're open to it. So if anyone is interested, just email Blanca. Are you gonna send our email out, or is it on the website?
Yes, well, we could send it out, but we'll add it to the website as well so that you can.
Cool. So first we'll have to talk with the facilitation team and ask the group if they're okay with that. So just give us some anticipation, and then we'll reach back out to you.
Yeah, and the girls, surprisingly enough, are just really, because it's such a vulnerable space that we don't want them to feel like people are like it's a fishbowl,
right?
Like they're watching everything that's happening. But the interesting thing that happens is that the people who come in to just observe become a part of that. So the students are even more comfortable with that. Like it doesn't feel like, oh, this is a grown up who walked into the conversation. Melania asked a question about data for students who stopped showing up.
Yeah, Milena, so I don't have data. The only data piece I have is that our retention of the program itself actually went up to 50%, but it's kind of skewed because we only had 2 sessions before COVID. But I do reach out to them when they don't show up. So we've sent postcards out that have the Exuberance logo. Aurora helped us send those out. And I've sent text messages and emails. We continue sending the calendar invites for the sessions, hoping that they show up. I've also directly emailed them like, hey, we miss you.
Yeah.
But we're also understanding that it is a pandemic and people are feeling different feels. So we also respect their space. But we are sending them memos frequently that we miss them.
Yeah, and to just recognize that we didn't stop. Just because the pandemic happened, I think a lot of times you feel like, oh, students don't want to be on Zoom all day long. And we thought that for a minute, but we knew what we wanted to do with this, so we kept showing up. So because the space is available and it's always there, students know that they can come back to it. So when we come back on campus, it's not like Exuberance happened prior to the pandemic. No, Exuberance has thrived, right? We've thrived during the pandemic. So
Yeah.
we still here. Like, where you at? We still here. Like, and it's open for you. Samantha, hey Sam. She asked a question about exuberance and sororities.
So the difference between exuberance and sororities, although they're very similar, and that's because I am in a sorority.
Not me. I love them though.
Right. They're very similar in the sense that we did talk about respecting yourself, and if you are wearing like your shirts and stuff,
you gotta
like,
be about it.
You know, like you're representing yourself and the org. The difference is that we have an intentional piece of them feeling comfortable within the group, but also sharing that sisterhood outside of the group.
Yeah.
Whereas in sororities, I feel like we get so proud of our letters and everyone that's in our org that we extend that like pride within our group and not so much outside of it. And not that it's intentional or unintentional, but that's just what it is. That's how it happens, because we still show up to spaces, and if we're getting interviewed by a woman and we don't know them, we're still kind of like, oh snap. And we don't want that with exuberance. So we're trying to get them to be open and extend that divine femininity.
Yeah, that's that receptiveness that we talk about. Like, that's our thing. The long-term vision is, okay, so we have girls who have been with us since the beginning, and we have girls who are graduating. And so the most interesting thing about it is, and one girl who is no longer a student at NLU, who still comes regularly.
That helped start.
Right. She actually helped start it. She's coming regularly to our meetings. So our long-term vision, I can say right now, is nothing like concrete that we've written down, but it's to continue to let it be an open space for students, whether they're NLU students or whether they're graduating. 2 of our graduating seniors asked if they can continue to come back. Absolutely. This is what you started. You were here. And I wanted to continue to be a space of girls to show up and, you know, because it's for them. Like, it's created by us, but it's for them.
Yeah. And with that student that you mentioned about that is enrolled right now. So it's showing that our group is helping with the persistence because she's not enrolled. She could have definitely been lost in the abyss.
Yeah.
But
she was one of our students who struggled a lot.
Yes.
She struggled with trusting girls in spaces. So the fact that she shows up and she's consistent says a lot about the space that we created for her.
And she started a lot of self-reflection too.
She did. Like, she's pretty amazing with it. And she comes in and she says stuff like, I had a really good day. And this is surprising to me. Like, I do not have a lot of good days. But she comes in and she talks and she unloads that. And then amazing thing too is we had someone come in recently who had a lot of questions about different things. And she was the first person to share. So that trust that she walked in with, it's starting to melt away a little bit. And we're happy about that. Siklali is one of our seniors. She says in the chat, we love her so much. She's actually one of our student employees we just hired. Like, when I tell you her resume and her cover letter was like, this is written by a young person. It was so amazing. So we're excited to have her on board. She said she's going to hack into Zoom even if she said she can't come. We love that. Blanca's asking about our funding source.
Yeah, so we're funded by a lot of different grants. I'm not exactly sure which ones because Aurora handles all that.
She's our money girl. She's our money lady.
But I was like,
do we have money, Aurora?
I was like, we need money. She said, well, how much? As much as Eagle Brotherhood, because that's equitable. Like, anything a little more.
So as long as Aurora says we have money, we feel good.
Right.
You won't deny money, right? You will take, if anybody wanted to make a donation, you guys would accept it.
Aurora's like, bring it on.
Aurora?
Bring it on over. I will say that Flor and Z work closely with our development team to basically figure out what it looks like to sustain. And they have very clear action items that are embedded into our action plan as a department, so that when we report out our funders, we have clear numbers and they collect data really nicely. So they're working with us so that we can keep those funding sources coming in for those special initiatives. So great job, Z and Flo.
I mean, this takes time and obviously funding, right? Because you are supporting so many women that need that safe space. So, you know, I just wanted to ask, so if there's any way that we can help and support and continue to support, we're here to help.
Listen, Aurora, you heard it. We heard it. we want the money. Yes. We've also decided to do a small birthday club because we are also into astrology. Like, we love astrology. We talk about it so much. So we want to honor the girls and the day they were born too. So we were thinking about some ways to use the funding because astrology, my cup. Because also a lot of our funding prior to the pandemic was spent on food and all that stuff. So now that we have more money to actually have for that, we want to use it for the girls and to honor them in that way. So that's why we do the swag, the journals, and all those things.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the journals.
Yeah, we have journals too. Sometimes we do journals.
We do a lot of journal prompts.
Yeah.
So they have their own journal.
Yeah, so Aurora also said we love cross-college partnerships too, so we can learn and grow. Yes, and that was one of the biggest reasons why we decided to do this workshop, is that we see what happened. Like, we were kind of nervous when the pandemic happened. I'm like, Flor, what are we going to do? She's like, we're just going to keep showing up. Yeah. And I was like, okay, if you're there, I'm there. We're going to do it. And we kept showing up. So the fact that we were able to do this lends to the fact that it can be done. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Flor said that too. If we haven't messed it up and it was brand new, anybody can
started
do
it.
We started it and it hasn't been messed up. So boom, there we go. Anybody can do it. Just, you need our help? Yes, because these girls need these spaces. They really, really do. And it was hard for the girls to recognize that there was a brotherhood group and not a sisterhood group. And that was one of the things I was like, I thought that was strange when I came in. I was like, why are they? I don't know.
But it's the power of student voice.
It's the power of student voice.
I actually helped Travis with a sign-up sheet one day for our org fair. So he had to be out, and Travis is the Eagle Brotherhood, one of the main facilitators. So I was like, okay, but this is like a boy club, what am I gonna do here? Yeah. So the girls would come in and they're like, well, where's the girl one? So they kept asking. So I just pulled out a sheet of paper. I'm like, let's start one. Yep. So we just did a sign-up sheet, and then I reached out to them once I kind of figured out the framework for it. But touching on Sam's point earlier, the other reason why we did this is because in most cases, you don't find the sisterhood aspect unless it is in a Greek organization, and not everybody's about that life, and that's fine. We had a hard time finding frameworks that were for college-age students. Yeah. And since I have the youth development background, I was like, well, this totally applies. So we were looking at like, wow, but those are all like high school level. So that's why we decided to do it with the restorative justice and the youth development frameworks. And
we literally created this from the ground up. Yeah, that's where we are.
And it's still growing.
Yep. So we thank you guys for coming today to listen to this. All. Thank you, Naisha, so much for coming. So Exuberance is going to grow, I guarantee you.
And shout out to Blanca
for pulling us in. Yes. We appreciate that, Blanca, so much.
Gabriela's here in our Zoom. Actually, I have to give her all the kudos because she's the one that brought up the idea of a women's conference. Mm-hmm. And we put it together and we ran with it, and it's just growing and growing. So we can finally say it's going to be our annual women's conference that we're going to have. It's not going away. Unless something really bad happens, but it's not. So I'm not even going to put it in the universe. But I do want to thank you so much for taking the time. And I do agree, collaboration between institutions is important because that is also sets the tone for our students and for our college community that we can work together and we can, support each other and be there for each other. So thank you so much for sharing this awesome workshop and for being here with us. And just so you know, NLU and Morgan College do have a really strong collaboration through a STEM program that we have together. So, I know that we're making things happen together. So just, stay tuned for all the news that's going to come out. So again, I think it's only us four left now. You can interrupt us, but I have to go through my script here. Thank you so much again. Tomorrow at 1:00, our next presentation is going to be Making Our Feminism Inclusive, Powerful, and Irresistible. Lastly, we will be surprising a lucky winner with the conference swag. Be sure to keep checking our website to join future workshop sessions and your chance to win conference goodies. And that's it. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Bye, Gabriela.